The space station floated in the darkness between stars like a giant silver wheel. It was called the Galactic Nursery Station, and it was the biggest child care center in the known universe. Species from 100 different worlds sent their young ones here to learn and grow together. The station was always busy, always loud, and always full of strange and wonderful creatures. But at night, when the artificial lights dimmed to match the sleeping hours of most species, the station became quiet. The long corridors were empty. The playrooms were dark. The only sound was the soft hum of machines keeping everyone alive in the cold vacuum of space. This was when Kang Tae-ho did his work. Tae-ho was a human man of 42 years. He had kind eyes that wrinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was often. His hair was starting to turn gray at the sides, and his hands were rough from years of honest work. He wore a simple blue uniform with the words, "Maintenance Staff," written on the back in several alien languages. He was a janitor. Every night, Tae-ho pushed his cleaning cart through the empty hallways. The cart had everything he needed: mops, cloths, cleaning solutions safe for a dozen different species, and a small music player that he kept in his pocket. He liked to hum old songs while he worked, songs his grandmother had taught him when he was a little boy back on Earth. Earth was very far away now. Tae-ho had not seen his home planet in 15 years. He had left because there was nothing there for him anymore. His wife had died young. They had no children. His parents were gone too. So when a job opened up on a space station that needed workers who did not mind being far from home, Tae-ho had raised his hand. He did not regret it. Not most days. Anyway, the Galactic Nursery Station was run by a species called the Valori. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes that glowed soft blue. The Valori were very smart. They were also very cold, not in temperature, but in feeling. They believed that emotions were something to be controlled, hidden away, and never shown. To them, a crying child was a problem to be solved with logic, not comfort. This made them excellent administrators. It also made them terrible at understanding humans. When Tae-ho first arrived at the station, the Valori had looked at him with something close to disgust. Humans were known across the galaxy for being emotional. They laughed too loud. They cried too easily. They touched each other constantly in ways that other species found strange and uncomfortable. A pat on the shoulder. A hand held during hard times. A hug for no reason at all. The Valori did not understand hugs. To them, humans were useful for only the simplest jobs, jobs that did not require intelligence or control. Jobs like cleaning floors and emptying trash. So that was what Tae-ho did, and he did it without complaint. He had learned long ago that complaining did not change anything. Only work changed things. Only kindness changed things. And Tae-ho believed very deeply in kindness. Every night, as he cleaned, he would see things that broke his heart a little. Young aliens, sleeping alone in their rooms, curled up tight because no one had tucked them in, little creatures crying softly in the dark because they missed their parents. The Valori staff would respond to these cries by adjusting the room temperature or playing calming sounds through the speakers. They did not understand that sometimes what a child needed was not logic. What a child needed was love. But Tae-ho was just a janitor. He was not allowed to interact with the children. Those were the rules. He was supposed to clean and leave, like a ghost that passed through the halls without being seen. For 3 years, he followed these rules. He kept his head down. He did his job. And every night, he listened to the sounds of lonely children and wished he could do something more. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday, or what passed for Tuesday on the station's calendar. Tae-ho was cleaning the East Wing, the section reserved for Draconian young. The Draconians were a powerful species. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories. Large, scaled, with wings and teeth and eyes that burned like fire. The adults were fierce warriors, proud and strong. But their children were small, their children were soft, and their children, Tae-ho had noticed, cried more than any others on the station. The Draconians believed in strength above all things. They believed that their young needed to learn to be alone, to be hard, to survive without help. So when draconian parents left their hatchlings at the nursery, they left strict instructions. Do not coddle them. Do not comfort them. Let them cry until they learn that crying brings no relief. The Valori followed these instructions perfectly. After all, they saw no reason not to. Taeho was mopping the floor outside the draconian sleeping chambers when he heard it. A sound that made him stop moving. A sound that made his heart squeeze tight in his chest. It was crying. But not just crying. It was the kind of crying that comes from deep, deep pain. The kind of crying that has no hope in it. The kind of crying that says, I am alone, and no one is coming, and I do not know how much longer I can bear it. Taeho stood very still. He looked at the closed door in front of him. A sign on the door showed the draconian symbol and the words, Restricted access. Staff only. He was not staff. Not real staff. He was just the man who cleaned the floors. The crying continued. It was not one voice, he realized. It was three. Three small voices, crying together in the darkness. And no one was coming to help them. Taeho looked down at his mop. He looked at the door. He thought about the rules. He thought about his job. And how hard it had been to find. And how he had nowhere else to go if he lost it. Then he thought about his grandmother. He thought about the way she used to hold him when he was scared. The way her arms around him made the whole world feel safe. Taeho put down his mop. He reached for the door. And he made a choice that would change the galaxy forever. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was dark except for a faint red glow coming from heating panels on the walls. Draconians liked warmth. Their homeworld was a planet of volcanoes and fire, and their young needed heat to grow properly. But heat, Taeho thought as he stepped inside, was not the same as warmth. The room was large, with 3 small beds arranged in a triangle. The beds were designed for draconian hatchlings, curved like nests, padded with heat-absorbing material, built to keep small bodies at the perfect temperature. Everything was correct. Everything was proper. Everything followed the guidelines exactly, and in those perfect beds, 3 small dragons were crying their hearts out. Taeho closed the door behind him and stood very still. His eyes needed time to adjust to the dim light. Slowly, he began to see them clearly. The first hatchling was the smallest. It was curled into a tight ball, its tiny wings wrapped around its body like a blanket. Its scales were a deep blue color, still soft because it was so young. The hatchling was shaking, trembling with each sob that escaped its throat. The second hatchling was a little bigger. Its scales were green, like emeralds, and its eyes were squeezed shut as tears ran down its face. It was making small, hiccuping sounds, the way children do when they have been crying for so long that they cannot catch their breath. The third hatchling was the largest of the 3, but still very small. It had red scales, and it was sitting up in its bed, staring at the door. When it saw Taeho, it froze. Its golden eyes went wide with fear. For a long moment, no one moved. Taeho knew he should leave. He knew he was breaking every rule the station had. He knew that if he was caught here, with these children, he would lose his job. Maybe worse. The Draconians were powerful, and they did not like outsiders near their young, but he could not leave. Not when they looked at him like that. Not when he could see the pain in their eyes. Slowly, carefully, Taeho lowered himself to the floor. He sat down cross-legged, making himself as small and unthreatening as possible. He did not move toward them. He did not reach out. He just sat, and he waited. The red-scaled hatchling watched him with suspicious eyes. After a moment, it spoke. The translator device in Taeho's ear turned the sounds into words he could understand. "Who are you?" the hatchling asked. Its voice was high and young, but Taeho could hear it trying to sound brave. "Are you a new caretaker?" Taeho shook his head gently. "No," he said. "I am just the man who cleans the floors." The green-scaled hatchling opened its eyes and looked at him. "Cleans the floors?" It repeated. confused. Yes, Teho said. I make sure the station is clean and neat. That is my job. The blue-scaled hatchling, the smallest one, did not look up. It kept crying, soft and hopeless, as if it had not even noticed that someone new had entered the room. The red-scaled hatchling frowned. Then why are you here? Our room is already clean. Teho thought about this question. He thought about all the logical answers he could give. But logic was not what these children needed. They had received enough logic from the Valori. They had received enough rules from their own people. I heard you crying, Teho said simply, and I wanted to make sure you were okay. The three hatchlings stared at him. Even the smallest one stopped crying for a moment, lifting its head to look at this strange creature who had said something no one had ever said to them before. Make sure we are okay? The green-scaled one repeated. What does that mean? Teho felt his heart crack a little more. These children did not understand the concept. No one had ever checked on them. No one had ever asked if they were okay. It means, Teho said carefully, that I care if you are happy or sad. It means I wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help you feel better. The red-scaled hatchling shook its head. You cannot help us, it said. We are supposed to learn to be strong. If we cry, we must cry alone. That is the way of our people. Our parents said so, the green-scaled one added. They said if we cry for comfort, we will never become true warriors. They said no one will come. The blue-scaled one whispered. Its voice was so small, so broken. They said, we must learn that no one will ever come. Teho closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his own childhood. He thought about the nights he had been scared, the nights he had cried, the nights when his grandmother had come to his room and held him close. She had never told him to be strong. She had never told him to suffer alone. She had simply loved him. And because of that love, he had grown up knowing that he was not alone in the universe. Because of that love, he had found the strength to survive everything life had thrown at him. These children had no such love. And they were expected to become warriors. Teho opened his eyes. Your people have their ways, he said softly. And I am sure your parents believe they are teaching you something important. But I am not draconian. I am human. And humans have a different way. And Samant, what way? The smallest hatchling asked. We believe, Teho said, that being strong does not mean being alone. We believe that asking for help is not weakness, and we believe that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone take care of you. The three hatchlings looked at each other. They did not understand. How could they? They had been told their whole lives that comfort was poison, that love made you weak, that the only way to survive was to need no one. But something in Teho's voice, something in his gentle eyes, made them want to believe him. The red-scaled hatchling spoke first. What is your name, floor cleaner? My name is Kang Teho, he said. But you can just call me Teho. I am Vera, the red-scaled one said. I am Noel, the green-scaled one added. The smallest one hesitated, then whispered, I am Kiss. Teho smiled at them. It was a warm smile, full of kindness. Hello, Vera. Hello, Noel. Hello, Kiss. It is very nice to meet you. Kiss started crying again. But this time the tears were different. They were not hopeless tears. They were the tears of someone who had been alone in the dark and had suddenly seen a small light. We have been here for 47 days, Noel said quietly. No one has talked to us like you are talking to us. The Valori bring us food and check our temperatures. But they never ask if we are okay. They say emotions are inefficient. Vera added bitterly. Teho nodded slowly. The Valori are good at many things, he said. But they are not good at understanding hearts. That is not their fault. They simply do not have hearts the way you and I do. He looked at the three hatchlings, so small and scared and alone. He thought about the rules. He thought about his job. He thought about everything he might lose. Then he opened his arms. Would you like a hug? He asked. The hatchlings did not know what a hug was. They had never experienced one. But something in them, something deep and ancient and true, understood what Taeho was offering, something they had needed their whole lives, something called love. Kiss moved first. The smallest hatchling climbed out of its bed on shaky legs and walked across the warm floor toward Taeho. Each step was uncertain, as if Kiss expected the human to disappear at any moment, as if this moment of kindness was too good to be real. When Kiss reached him, the little dragon stopped and looked up. Its blue scales caught the dim red light of the room, making them shimmer like deep water. Its eyes, large and wet with tears, searched Taeho's face for any sign of danger. Taeho did not move. He kept his arms open and his smile gentle. He waited, slowly, very slowly. Kiss leaned forward and pressed its small body against Taeho's chest. The moment they touched, something changed. Taeho felt the little dragon's heartbeat, fast and scared, like a bird trapped in a cage. He felt the warmth of Kiss's scales, warmer than human skin but still somehow fragile. He felt the way the hatchling trembled, not from cold but from the overwhelming newness of being held. Taeho wrapped his arms around Kiss gently. Not too tight, because he did not want to frighten the little one. Just enough to say, "I am here. You are safe. You are not alone." Kiss made a sound that Taeho had never heard before. It was something between a purr and a sob, deep in the throat, a sound that seemed to come from the very center of the hatchling's being. It was the sound of walls coming down, the sound of pain being released, the sound of a heart finally allowing itself to feel. For a long moment, they stayed like that, human and dragon, sitting on the floor of a space station that floated in the endless dark between stars. Two creatures from different worlds, connected by something older than language and simpler than reason. Then Noel came. The green-scaled hatchling did not walk. It ran. It threw itself across the room and crashed into Taeho's side, with enough force to make him rock backward. But he caught Noel easily, opening his arm to make room, pulling the second hatchling into the embrace. Noel buried its face in Taeho's shoulder and began to cry. Really cry. This time. Not the quiet, hopeless crying from before, but loud, messy, ugly crying. The kind of crying that happens when you finally feel safe enough to let everything out. Taeho held both of them. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say. Words were not what they needed. They just needed to be held. Vera was the last. The red-scaled hatchling sat in its bed, watching with wide golden eyes. It was the oldest of the three, and Taeho could see the conflict on its face. Vera wanted to come. Every part of its body was leaning toward the warmth of the embrace, but something was holding it back. Pride, maybe, or fear, or the voice of its parents, saying that warriors do not need comfort. Taeho met Vera's eyes across the room. He did not call to the hatchling. He did not beg or persuade. He simply looked at Vera with understanding, with patience, with love that asked for nothing in return. "It is okay to need people," Taeho said softly. "It does not make you weak. It makes you alive." Vera's face crumpled. All the bravery, all the pretending, all the trying to be strong, it all fell away in an instant. The hatchling scrambled out of bed and ran to Taeho, climbing onto his lap, pressing close to Kiss and Noel, becoming part of the warmth. And there, on the floor of a dark room in a space station far from anywhere, Taeho held 3 dragon hatchlings and let them cry. He did not know how long they stayed like that. Time seemed to stop. The universe seemed to shrink, until it contained only this moment, only this warmth, only these small creatures who had been so starved for love. After a while, the crying began to slow. The sobs became sniffles. The trembling became stillness. The hatchlings relaxed against Taeho's body, their breath growing even and deep. Kiss looked up at him with tired eyes. "What is this called?" the smallest dragon asked. "This thing you are doing with your arms?" "It is called a hug," Taeho said. "Hug," Kiss repeated, testing the word. "I like hugs." Noel nodded sleepily. "Hugs are warm. Warmer than the heating panels," Vera added. The red-scaled hatchling sounded surprised, as if it had discovered something amazing. "Why is that?" "You are not even hot," Teho smiled. "Because warmth is not just about temperature," he explained. "There is another kind of warmth. The warmth of caring. The warmth of knowing someone is there for you. That kind of warmth comes from the heart, not from heat." The hatchlings were quiet, thinking about this. "Our people do not believe in heart warmth," Vera said finally. "They believe it makes you soft, easy to hurt." "Maybe it does," Teho admitted. "Loving people means they can hurt you. That is true. But not loving people, not letting anyone close, that hurts too. It hurts in a different way. A slower way. A way that makes you hard and cold inside until there is nothing left." "Is that why we felt so empty?" Noel asked. "Before you came?" Teho nodded sadly. "Yes, little one. That is exactly why." Kiss pressed closer to Teho's chest. "Will you come back tomorrow?" It was such a simple question, such a small hope, but it hit Teho like a weight on his heart. He thought about the rules. He thought about the Valori administrators who would be furious if they found out. He thought about the draconian parents who had given strict instructions. He thought about everything that could go wrong. Then he looked at the three small faces looking up at him, and he knew there was only one answer he could give. "Yes," he said. "I will come back tomorrow." The hatchlings made sounds of happiness, small chirps and purrs that vibrated against Teho's body. They snuggled closer, as if trying to memorize the feeling of being held. "Teho," Vera said quietly. "Yes? In our language, we have a word for someone who protects you. Someone who keeps you safe when you are small and scared. We call them Korma. It means guardian, I think, or keeper." Teho waited, not sure where this was going. Vera looked up at him with golden eyes that shimmered in the low light. "Can we call you Korma?" Teho felt tears prick at his own eyes. Tears he had not cried in years. Tears he thought had dried up long ago. "Yes," he whispered. "You can call me that." Eventually, the hatchlings fell asleep. One by one, their eyes closed, and their breathing deepened. They did not let go of Teho. Even in sleep, their small claws held onto his uniform, as if afraid he would disappear. Teho did not mind. He sat there on the floor, holding 3 sleeping dragons, and for the first time in 15 years, he felt like he had a purpose. Not just a job, not just a way to pass the time until he died. A real purpose. Someone needed him, and he would not let them down. Carefully, gently, he began to hum. An old song from Earth. A song his grandmother used to sing when she tucked him into bed. The melody was soft and sweet, rising and falling like waves on a distant shore. The hatchlings stirred slightly in their sleep, but they did not wake. If anything, they relaxed even more, as if the music was reaching them in their dreams. Teho hummed until his throat grew tired. Then he simply sat in silence, watching over them, protecting them, loving them. He knew there would be consequences. He knew tomorrow would bring problems he could not predict. But right now, in this moment, none of that mattered. Right now, 3 little dragons were sleeping peacefully for the first time in 47 days, and that was enough. The morning came too soon. Teho had fallen asleep on the floor, his back against the wall, 3 hatchlings piled in his lap. When the lights in the corridor outside began to brighten, signaling the start of the station's day cycle, he opened his eyes and felt his heart drop. He had stayed too long. Carefully, so carefully, he tried to untangle himself from the sleeping dragons. But the moment he moved, Kiss woke up. The smallest hatchling blinked at him with confused blue eyes, then made a small sound of distress. "You are leaving?" Kiss whispered. "I have to," Teho said gently, "before anyone sees me here. But I will come back tonight. I promise." Teho 7. Teho 7. Teho 7. Teho 7. Teho 7. Vera and Noel were waking up now too, disturbed by the movement. They looked at Teho with sleepy, worried faces. "Promise?" Noel asked. "Promise," Teho said. He reached out and touched each of their heads softly. A small gesture of comfort. Be brave today. And remember, you are not alone. He stood up, his old bones protesting after a night on the hard floor. He gave the hatchlings one last smile, then slipped out the door. The corridor was empty. Tae-ho exhaled with relief and hurried back to his cleaning cart, which he had left abandoned hours ago. He grabbed it and began pushing it toward the maintenance area, trying to look like he had been working all along. He almost made it. Maintenance worker Kang. The voice stopped him cold. It was precise and flat, with no emotion in it at all. A Valori voice. Tae-ho turned slowly. Standing behind him was a Valori administrator. Her skin was pale gray. Her eyes glowed soft blue, and her expression was completely unreadable. On her uniform was a name tag that read, Station Officer Yoon Hana. Hana was human in name only. She had been raised on the station, adopted by Valori mentors, trained in their ways. She spoke like them, thought like them, and felt, or rather, did not feel like them. Officer Yoon, Tae-ho said, trying to keep his voice steady. Good morning. Hana studied him with her glowing eyes. You were not in your assigned cleaning areas for the past 7 hours, she said. I reviewed the security logs. Would you like to explain? Tae-ho's mind raced. He could lie. He could say he had been sick, or lost, or had fallen asleep in a storage closet. But lies had a way of growing, of becoming impossible to maintain, and besides, he had never been good at lying. I was with the draconian hatchlings, he said quietly. Hana's expression did not change, but something flickered in her blue eyes. That section is restricted to authorized personnel only. I know. You violated station protocol. I know. The draconian guardians left specific instructions that their young were not to receive physical comfort. You violated those instructions as well. Tae-ho was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Hana directly, meeting her cold eyes with his warm ones. Those children were dying, he said. Hana blinked. The medical scans show no physical illness. Not that kind of dying, Tae-ho said. They were dying inside. Their hearts were breaking. They have been alone in that room for 47 days, crying every night, and no one came. No one held them. No one told them they mattered. Emotional distress is not a medical condition, Hana said. But her voice was slightly less certain now. Maybe not for Valori, Tae-ho replied. But for dragons? For humans? Emotional distress can kill us. It is slower than disease, quieter than injury. But it is just as deadly. Those hatchlings were giving up. I could see it in their eyes. If someone did not show them love soon, they would have stopped fighting to live. Hana was silent for a long moment. Tae-ho could see her processing his words, analyzing them, trying to fit them into her Valori understanding of the universe. Finally, she spoke. I am required to report this incident to the Draconian Elders. Tae-ho felt his stomach drop. The Draconian Elders were powerful, proud, and fiercely protective of their traditions. If they learned that a human janitor had been hugging their hatchlings, teaching them about comfort and love. I understand, Tae-ho said quietly. Do what you have to do. Hana nodded once, then turned and walked away. Her footsteps echoed in the empty corridor until they faded to silence. Tae-ho stood alone, gripping the handle of his cleaning cart. He knew what was coming. The elders would be furious. He would lose his job. He might even face criminal charges for violating draconian protocols regarding their young. But when he closed his eyes, he could still feel 3 small bodies pressed against him. He could still hear Kiss asking if he would come back. He could still see Vera's face when the hatchling had called him Korma. Whatever happened next, he did not regret it. The draconian elders arrived 3 days later. Their ship was massive. A great vessel of black metal and burning engines that docked at the station like a predator settling beside its prey. Word spread quickly through the station. The dragons were here, and they were not happy. Tae-ho continued his work as if nothing was wrong. What else could he do? He cleaned floors. He emptied trash. He hummed his grandmother's songs and waited for the end. It came on the 3rd evening. 2 draconian warriors found him in the eastern corridor. They were enormous, 3 times his size, with scales like armor and eyes like fire. They said nothing. They simply gestured for him to follow. Tejo followed. They led him to a large conference room in the administrative section. Inside, 3 figures waited at a long table. They were old dragons, ancient by the look of them, with scales that had faded to pale silver and gold. Their eyes burned with centuries of wisdom and power. The elders. Standing beside them was Officer Hana, her face as blank as ever. And at the back of the room, huddled together, were Vera, Noel, and Kiss. When the hatchlings saw Tejo, they made sounds of joy and tried to run to him. But a warrior stopped them with a raised claw. The eldest dragon, the one in the center, spoke. His voice was deep and ancient, like stones grinding together. "You are the human called Kang Tejo?" "I am," Tejo said. "You entered the chamber of our young without permission. You touched them. You held them. You taught them a word from your language. Hug. Is this true?" "It is true." The elder's eyes narrowed. "Our ways are clear. Our young must learn to be strong alone. They must learn that comfort is weakness. You have interfered with their development. You have damaged them." Tejo felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "With respect, elder. I did not damage them. I helped them." "Helped them?" Another elder, a female with gold scales, leaned forward. "By teaching them to need others? By making them soft? By teaching them they are loved," Tejo said. "There is a difference." The elders looked at each other. Then the eldest one made a gesture with his claw. "Bring the hatchlings forward." The warrior stepped aside. Vera, Noel, and Kiss walked slowly toward the center of the room. They looked scared. But when they passed Tejo, they looked at him with something else in their eyes. Trust. The elder studied them. "Hatchlings. This human claims he helped you. Is this true?" Vera stepped forward. The red-scaled hatchling stood as straight as it could, trying to be brave. "Yes, elder," Vera said. "It is true. Before Tejo came, we wanted to die." The room went silent. Even the elders seemed shocked. "We cried every night," Noel added quietly. "No one came. We thought no one cared if we lived or died. We were starting to believe that maybe we should just stop." "Stop what?" the female elder asked. "Stop trying," Kiss whispered. "Stop breathing. Stop everything. Stop everything." The elders stared at the hatchlings. Something shifted in their ancient faces. Something that might have been horror. "Then Tejo came," Vera continued. "He held us. He told us we mattered. He called it a hug. And for the first time in 47 days, we did not want to die anymore." Tejo watched the elders' faces. He saw something he had not expected to see. Doubt. The silence in the room stretched on and on. The elders sat motionless, their ancient eyes fixed on the 3 hatchlings standing before them. Tejo could see the conflict on their faces. These were creatures who had lived for centuries, who had built their entire culture around the idea that strength came from isolation, that love was a weakness to be burned away. And now 3 small children were telling them that this philosophy had almost killed them. Finally, the eldest dragon spoke. His voice was quieter now, less certain. "You wanted to die?" he asked the hatchlings. Kiss nodded, tears forming in its blue eyes. "Every night, we thought about it. We thought maybe if we stopped breathing, the pain would stop too." "What pain?" the female elder asked. "The medical reports showed you were healthy. Well-fed. Warm. Not that kind of pain," Noel said. "The pain in here." The green-scaled hatchling pressed a small claw to its chest, over its heart. "The pain of being alone, of thinking no one in the universe cared if we existed." The elders exchanged glances. Something was happening between them, a silent conversation of looks and small gestures. Tejo stood very still, barely breathing. He did not know what would happen next. He only knew that the truth was finally being spoken. And sometimes, The truth was the most powerful force in the universe. The eldest elder turned his burning eyes to Taeho. "Human," he said slowly. "In all my centuries of life, I have never heard our young speak this way. I have never seen hatchlings who wanted to die because they were not held. We do not. We do not have a word for what you did. This hug. We do not have a concept for it." "I know," Taeho said gently. "Many species do not. Humans are different. We need touch. We need connection. Without it, we wither. We die inside, even if our bodies keep living." "And you believe draconians are the same?" the female elder asked. Taeho looked at Vera, Noel, and Kiss. He looked at their small faces, full of hope and fear and love. "I believe all creatures need love," he said. "Maybe not in the same way. Maybe not in the same amount. But every living thing needs to know that it matters. That someone cares. Your hatchlings were taught that no one would ever come when they cried. And they believed it. That belief was killing them." The room was silent again. Then, slowly, the eldest elder rose from his seat. He was enormous, towering over everyone in the room. His silver scales catching the light, he walked around the table with heavy, ancient steps, until he stood before Taeho. Taeho had to tilt his head back to look at the elder's face. He felt very small suddenly, very human, very fragile. The elder stared down at him for a long moment. "In our language," the elder said, "we have a word for someone who saves a life. We call them Vorkai. It means debt holder. When someone saves you, you owe them a debt that can never be fully repaid." Taeho did not know what to say. He simply waited. "You saved our hatchlings," the elder continued. "Not their bodies. Their spirits. Their will to live. You are Vorkai." Then the elder did something that shocked everyone in the room. He bowed. It was not a deep bow, but it was a bow nonetheless. A gesture of respect from a creature of fire and power to a simple human janitor. The other elders rose and bowed as well, their ancient scales rustling with the movement. Taeho felt tears on his cheeks. He had not even realized he was crying. "We have been fools," the female elder said softly. "We thought we were teaching strength. We were teaching despair. We thought we were preparing our young for a harsh universe. We were breaking them before they could even begin." "What will you do now?" Officer Hana asked. It was the first time she had spoken since the meeting began. Her voice was still flat, but there was something new in her eyes, something almost like curiosity. The eldest elder turned to face her. "We will learn," he said. "For the first time in 10,000 years, draconians will learn from another species. We will learn about this hug. We will learn about comfort and connection. We will learn to hold our young when they cry, instead of leaving them to suffer alone." He looked back at Taeho. "And we will need teachers. Humans who understand these things. Humans who can show us what we have forgotten. Or perhaps never knew." Taeho shook his head. "I am just a janitor," he said. "I clean floors. I am not a teacher." "You are wrong," the elder replied. "You are exactly what we need. Someone who does not care about power or position. Someone who simply sees a crying child and cannot walk away. Someone whose first instinct is kindness." He paused. "We would like to offer you a new position, Kang Taeho. We want you to be our first emotional consultant. You would travel to our nursery stations across the galaxy and teach our caretakers how to provide comfort, how to give love, how to keep our young from dying inside." Taeho stared at the elder. He could not believe what he was hearing. "The pay would be substantial," the female elder added. "And you would have complete authority over emotional care protocols. No one would be able to tell you that comfort is weakness. Not anymore." Quote, Taeho looked at the three hatchlings. They were watching him with wide, hopeful eyes. "Please say yes." "Korma," Kiss whispered. "Please." Taeho felt something crack open inside him, something that had been closed for 15 years, ever since he lost his wife and left Earth, and decided that he would spend the rest of his life alone, doing simple work, waiting to die. He had been wrong. There was more for him. There was purpose. There was meaning. There was love. Yes, he said. I will do it. The hatchlings cheered. They broke away from the warriors and ran to Tejo, throwing themselves into his arms. He caught them and held them close, laughing and crying at the same time. The elders watched with something like wonder on their ancient faces. Officer Hana watched too. And for just a moment, something in her cold Valori eyes seemed to soften. Just a little. In the months that followed, everything changed. Tejo traveled to draconian nursery stations across the galaxy. He taught caretakers how to hold hatchlings when they cried. He showed them how to speak softly, how to comfort, how to love. It was strange work for a species that had spent millennia believing in isolation and strength. But slowly, hatchling by hatchling, they began to learn. The death spiral depressions that had plagued draconian young for generations began to decrease. Hatchlings who had once spent their nights crying in the dark now slept peacefully, knowing that someone would come if they called. Warriors who had grown up hard and cold began to wonder if there was another way. Other species noticed. They sent representatives to study this strange new approach. They asked questions. They took notes. They began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong too. Word spread across the galaxy about the human janitor who had changed everything, about the man who had walked into a room full of crying dragons and simply held them. They called him many things in many languages: Vorkai, Korma, healer, teacher, friend. But Tejo did not care about the titles. He did not care about the fame, or the respect, or the important positions. He cared about the hatchlings. He cared about Vera, Noel, and Kiss, who visited him whenever they could, who called him Korma, who never forgot the night he had first held them. And he cared about the simple truth that had guided him all along. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is be gentle. The bravest thing you can do is show love. And the greatest power in the universe is not fire, or force, or weapons. It is a hug. Years later, when historians wrote about the great change in galactic culture, they would call it many things: the comfort revolution, the kindness movement, the human gift. But Tejo, old now and gray, sitting in a garden on a peaceful planet with 3 full-grown dragons who still liked to rest their great heads in his lap, called it something simpler. He called it doing the right thing. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.